On October 4th, 2018, at the Quantico Corporate Office Park, the TrustComm team demonstrated the integrated JBN solution. JBN stands for Joint Broadband Network, which is the infrastructure for offensive and defensive cyber operations, robotics, the Internet of Things, C4I/SR activities, and distance support. Their unclassified live demonstration featured capabilities that included a successful defense of real-world attacks on their network. Bowling Green supervisor Jeff Seeley, who also serves as a senior systems engineer on Dahlgren, facilitated the meeting and the attendance of 1st Congressional District Congressman Rob Whitman. A potential byproduct of the JBN is a fix for our nation's rural broadband crisis.
Dahlgren's in your district. Dahlgren is my principal customer at this point. This is not a traditional defense contractor team. And as you'll see as we go through this, what we're trying to do is change the business process by which the Navy's buying, or DOD is buying networks and IT, because what we've been doing to date is not working that well.
A little bit about Al. He's a former Navy captain.
Yes.
At sea, command of a ship, has huge understanding, spent some time up in the Pentagon.
Spent my last 10 years in acquisition. Started BCGS program in the Navy, then got promoted up in the CO3. I was deputy CO3 for the last 3 years I was in the Navy.
So it's somebody with, on the deck plate experience that I think really is what we lack sometimes in doing some of these projects.
From Dahlgren's perspective, this is about building an end-to-end engagement chain for war at sea and for land attack. If we were to get into a war in Southeast Asia, that will be a critical capability. Our existing capability is ashore, and it's on 72-hour timelines. So we're very good at attacking buildings, and we're very good at attacking things with aircraft. What we're trying to do is give each one of the combatants an organic capability for warfare.
Sure.
And then one other point here is that if you look at this problem set end to end, you've crossed about a dozen programs in all 3 SysComs. We don't do that very well. This OB1 is at the top level what we're trying to create. You create a point of presence around a ship, a company, a fob, wired and wireless access, either Wi-Fi and LTE, and then a significant backhaul to allow cloud access from the tactical edge. Now, in order to do that, you have to harden these commercial architectures to operate in the military environment. The things in the blue bubble are the things that you need to address. We think that this architecture addresses those 4 bullets under this architecture provides, which are the future problems that DOD needs to address. When we say joint broadband network, we mean those 5 things. I'll tick them off real quick. Fixed and wireless access. All of this is commercially derived, but then hardened for combat. Hyper-converged computing environment. You'll see one of those today. You'll actually see everything today except for the MPLS network. And that's the fiber network that's laid all over the world that allows us to, in milliseconds, connect one part of Europe to the other. The lower right is a screen capture from an experiment we did on the USS Fort Worth in 2015. That 600 megabits per second is more bandwidth than the rest of the fleet combined today. This is another way to look at this architecture. At the extreme left, you have the tactical edge environment. We have their hyper-converged compute, wireless and wired access, and then the ability to operate connected and disconnected. If you're operating connected, now we're using O3B SATCOM, so now I have broadband SATCOM, and instead of 10 or dozen megabits. I have up to 1.2 gigabits of backhaul connecting me to the cloud or the gig. Round trip from the tactical edge to the cloud and back is 600 milliseconds. One of the characteristics of this architecture is that we're within the tolerances of the commercial LTE standards, so we can build a commercial grade telephone network at the tactical edge and then harden it with cyber and encryption. This slide outlines where we are today in relative to SATCOM. The combatants, which is about 115 or 150 ships in the fleet, are between 2 and 8 megabits of SATCOM, and that is for all the functions that they have. The big decks have 36 megabits of SATCOM. In the case of an aircraft carrier, that's me and 5,000 of my friends sharing that pipe. Again, we demonstrated 660 on Fort Worth in the PanderaNet experiment. There's 43 cruise ships with this SATCOM architecture deployed, and they're operating at 1.2 gigabits. One of them is operating at 3 gigabits because they doubled up on the architecture. And then if we were to apply this to big decks, we could get all of the big decks to the 1.2 gigabit. The combatants, because of antenna size, we could do the 660 megs on every ship up through the Aegis ships. LPD and larger, we could go with the larger antenna and the higher bandwidth.
Talk about the antenna size a second.
Sure. So the smallest antenna we have is a 12-inch antenna, 25 megabit per second data rates. It's actually an aviation antenna. There's a 17-inch antenna as well. It's been flown on the wide-body aircraft like President's aircraft, 75 megabits per second. The ground-based terminals, the one you're going to see today is an 85 centimeters, 400 megabits of SATCOM. The 1 meter class antenna is a 660, and the 2.2 maritime is 1.2 gigs. There's a 2.4 meter land-based antenna that's 1.5 gigs. Right? That is, in the case of the 2.2 maritime, it's a 930% improvement over the existing architecture.
Or if I can say it different, the average sailor today has to deal with about 8 kilobits per second per sailor per ship or per computer. So that's slower than my dial-up modem back in 1985. If you go with this kind of an architecture, every sailor will have about 100 to 120 megabits per second, which now will allow them to actually fight the wars real time, efficiently, and do things that they simply cannot do today.
So everyone's aware that we have a significant cyber problem. In the commercial space, the Sony breach was a significant that all Fortune 500 companies got serious about it. As a result, companies like Verizon got serious about it. So in this architecture, we have 2 cyber protection schemes. One is Verizon software defined perimeter. We're going to demonstrate that down in the hub to you. That protects the data from the device to the cloud and back. In addition to that, in the hyperconverged computing environment, we have a second cyber defense which operates at the CPU BIOS level. And what that means is that in order to get access to any computing resources, you need to be able to authenticate. That defeats almost all malware solutions because they all rely on the victim computer to execute, and this scheme denies that. So we have, in addition to that, we're running commercial solutions for classified, which is NSA's encryption scheme for software devices. And those 3 protections, we think, make this relatively safe.
Can we talk a little bit about this? Because Rob, this really, in both the commercial and the military aspect, what Verizon has done, there's a lot of different Verizon business units. Sure. This business unit has actually come up with, as a small company, one of our problems is we now have to follow like NIST 179, which is killing us. The technology that they've got, we're talking today with them about how do you gang small businesses together so that they all can have this SDP network, have it locked down like it does, and lessen the burden on companies so that they're working on technology and spending money on technology and not trying to build an infrastructure for cyber that they can't afford and don't have the resources to divert that way instead of technology. And I talked to Randy for a while today.